Hello, everyone. My name is Greg Zarko, and welcome to Week 7 of MPA 510 History and Theory Public Administration. In this week's presentation, I will be going over two articles that I read in our book. They will be The Ethics Challenge in Public Service by Carol W. Lewis and The Face of Administrative Evil, Finding a Basic for Ethics in the Public Service by Guy B. Adams and Danny L. Balfour. I picked these two because ethics is, when I think of public administration, I think of Toby from The Office. So it takes me to EHR, and I've been wondering um, how would ethics be covered in this class. So I found these two topics interesting. The first article that I read was The Ethics Challenge in Public Service by Carol W. Lewis. Um, and right off the bat, Lewis lets us know that while common sense might be a good way to solve some problems that are routine, in the long run, ethics will only be getting more muddled going forward because the U.S. or managers practice two different types of approaches towards ethics. One is the deontological approach, which is the principles underlying action, or the other one's the teleological, which is consequences of action. So, in layman's terms, one is the first approach is whether you do right or wrong, um, the end result doesn't matter because you do what's right. The second approach is the ends justifies the means. It doesn't matter how you get to it, as long as the result is for the greater good, then that's what it's for. And the example they use is the Iran Contra uh, affair with General Oliver North, where he lied to the people or to the government because he thought he was doing the right thing. So he never questioned himself as to whether uh, he was doing right or wrong because he knew at the end he was doing the right thing. And that's something that will always go back and forth. And it kind of reminded me of the article by Lindblom, The Science of Muddling Through, because at one point it said that the policymaker has to, the policymaker knows that they won't get exactly what they wanted when they first try to create the policy. So at one point they're having to deal with the with with what they're willing to settle for. So I'm sure at some point it becomes an ethical choice of whether they wanted to sacrifice, one of their key points in their policy. I paired Lewis's article with Ethics and the Public Service by Stephen K. Bailey. Bailey suggests that the most serious of threats in public service does not come from man's finality, but from the imperfections in the system. The article suggests that personal ethics in the public service is compounded of mental attitudes and moral qualities, and that those moral qualities a public servant must have are optimism, courage, and fairness tempered by charity. Um, so I think what Lewis is saying is, no. So what said is that for any big democracy to survive, its public servants must possess those qualities. So I found it interesting because Lewis ultimately ended up with saying that ethics falls on the shoulders of the individual managers and how they determine what is ethical. Um, and now Bailey states that certain characteristics must be had by public servants. So I guess this is where our country is split on what is appropriate and what is not. For the second article out of the book, I read In the Face of Administrative Evil, Finding a Basis for Ethics in the Public Service by Guy B. Adams and Danny L. Balfour. Um, so this article starts with a summary of the two types of ethics that one um, that one manager or public administrator possesses. Um, they are the tele- teleological ethics, which is the ends justify the means, and the deontological, which is duty and orders, um, consequences be damned, for the lack of a better term. Um, the example they use is the Holocaust. And the article talks about how the public administrators that worked for the Nazi Party, uh, could they be ethical and still do their job properly, and still do right by the public interest, because the public, the orders they were given were created by legitimate government personnel. Um, so they followed procedures, and they could always justify their work by saying that they weren't involved in the harming of Jewish people or other undesirables, as the book states. Um, this summary or this article also talked about the position these public administrators were in. They can either be good or responsible administrators, um, and at the same time be committing uh, heinous acts of administrative evil. Or as a civil servant, they could voice their disagreement with public policy, um, but if it did not result in change of the policy, then the only acceptable course they were left with were to either exit public administration or be loyal to the cause. Um, so it was a very interesting read, to say the least. Um, and their goal was just try to show that there is a line of ethics, and that ultimately falls onto the manager, um, and they are the ones responsible with having to justify their actions or the actions for themselves. The article that I've chosen to pair with "In the Face of Administrative Evil: Finding a Basis for Ethics in the Public Service" is "Ethics and Evil: Frameworks for 21st Century Culture" by Daniel Bell. In Daniel Bell's article, he states that we have an ethics problem in the 21st century, and uses that uses the fact that almost all human societies have searched for a golden rule or a bedrock principle that would guide them for all moral relations between people. And in this article, he uses a Sermon on the Mount, the discourse of Jesus recorded in Matthew 5:7, and the sermon proclaims, "Blessed are the merciful, for they shall obtain mercy," or as most would say, treat others the way you want to be treated. Uh, but it gives examples of people in the Holocaust, the current Iraq war that just ended, of how we tend to justify things as long as they're in our favor, to include genocide. But and and concludes that there may be problems that are irresolvable within the civilized world. That concludes my presentation this week. Thank you all very much for being here, and good luck this week with our final week in this class. Good luck to everyone.